If we go to Starfield's page on Steam, obviously you always have system requirements here, and it seems like for the minimum requirements, but an RX 5700 or a GeForce 1070 Ti. For recommended spec, they're asking for a 6800 XT, which I do have in my system, then a much lower power RTX 2080. That's only 64% the performance of the 6800 XT. So I just wanted to point out these system requirements are pretty demanding. But the game is actually coming out on September 5th, but if you get the digital premium edition for $100 instead of $70, you can get it today. That's how I have access to it today. But let's jump in, check out some GPUs with the 5800X3D CPU as its pairing, and see how this stuff runs. We quickly realize in Starfield that you have to compile shaders on the home screen, so gonna have to wait for that. Okay, so I wanted to point out here, we're in Starfield on the RX 6800 XT, so this is actually one of the recommended GPUs. And if you set the graphics presets in this game, if you go to Ultra or High or whatever, it changes your resolution scaling automatically. I'm just on one of these like early planets. I don't know if this is like procedurally generated. I don't know if you guys would get this exact same planet or what. So it seems like on low settings at 1440p, we're getting like 84 FPS or something like that. Go to high settings and turn off upscaling. So we're at high settings at 1440p without upscaling. Just do a little run through here. Okay, it seems like we're going to be getting about 60 FPS. So I think they were accurate with their system requirements. They said a 6800 XT at 1440p for, I think, high settings, 60 FPS. So I guess that's cool to see. Let's see how, if you were to turn on some FSR. Now, something about this game is they do not give you FSR presets. So if you want to set up some render resolution, they also offer Fidelity FX CAS, which is just a spatial upscaler. Let's just try it on with some FSR, and then FSR quality is typically 66% render resolution or 67%. Do I have, oh, dynamic resolution, turn off that too. Let's go ahead and just do another FPS test. Let's go ahead and run through here. Like, I know this is like a big planet and stuff, and it has to load a lot of textures, but I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't say the ground exactly looks that detailed or anything like that. It's not like magic. I'd say the game looks okay in the grand scheme of things, not insane. I mean, it seems like we got around 80 FPS, so that seems to be about the same difference as going from low settings to high settings. So if you just turn on FSR quality at 1440p, expect gains kind of like that. I would say FSR is better here. Like, there's some issues. I see when do you see when I take the gun out that it kind of has like a ghosting effect behind it? And I'm gonna see if I can test that without FSR really quick. And let's see if it still gets that. No. So that is an issue with FSR, but overall, I would say that FSR does look quite good in this game. So I'm turning back to 66%. It doesn't really fall apart in motion. I don't have motion blur on or anything right now. It looks good. Like, actually, FSR, this is probably one of the best showings, which honestly, I hope it's one of the best showings for FSR because I don't think this has DLSS in it. I'll see when I throw in the RTX 3080 to test that. FSR does look really good in this game, so would it even be necessary to have DLSS? I'm not even sure, but at the same time, we'd still want to see it. In my personal opinion, I think this is a little bit overly demanding. At least VRAM usage isn't crazy from what, like, we're at high settings right now. Apparently, from what I've seen, the CPU requirements are pretty crazy. The graphical quality you're getting, like, I just don't think these rocks and stuff look that good. Well, on ultra settings on the 6800 XT, just kind of walking around here, it seems like we're getting, you know, like mid 50s, somewhere in there most of the time, which isn't exactly the best frame rate. Obviously, if you were to go ahead and turn on FSR, put it at quality, 66%, then you'll get over 60 FPS at Ultra. So this seems to be another game that is going to be relying on upscaling to get good performance, because the 6800 XT is still a very fast GPU. And this game doesn't even have ray tracing in it. Apparently this is going to be kind of rough. I guess we'll see how it goes. All right, so let's go ahead and take out the 6800 XT and go ahead and maybe throw in the RX 6700 non-XT with 10 gigabytes of VRAM. Kind of a more mid-range graphics card. Let's just start this off on the high settings. and let's turn off upscaling and see what the 6700 can get. This is actually, if you want for reference, this is about equivalent power that's in the current consoles right now. And I think the current consoles run this game at a locked 30 FPS. And that seems to be about what we could maybe get, is locked 30 FPS here, doing the same little walk around route. This isn't ideal. Like, I think this would be more of a 1080p graphics card. Let's see at what amount of FSR, I guess, you would have to use in order to, and just to get a decent level. So let's try it at quality, 66%. Will this get us close to 60 FPS? It does not look like it. Oh God. So, I mean, the game visually still looks good. Definitely looks pretty choppy when you move the mouse around quickly. And we're really in the mid 40s. I was going to say that we got up to 50, but what I think is the main problem too is I don't think this looks graphically that intensive. Like, I remember the first like Battlefront games that came around in like 2013 when they revived that series from Star Wars. And I think the Frostbite engine actually looked better than this, if I'm crazy. Okay, well, let's see what we could do in order to get playable settings on this. Let's try putting it at low 1440p, but let's turn off upscaling. Let's see what happens. You know, we went from what, 30 FPS on high to low settings and getting like 47, mid 40s again. You could probably play on this. This is no upscaling. This is native. I'm just being completely honest. Like, this doesn't look bad on low, like visually. Let's just stand here. Does it look that much better than on low? I'd say low settings look completely fine in this game though. Or you can't adjust textures. I think the draw distance is probably what hurts on low. And it seems like the shadow resolution, like, do you see this? Flickeriness, do you see that? Some flickeriness in the shadows. I can't turn it down to 1080p because this game's annoying. Is if you go into the settings menu and you want to just, you know, mess with your display. Say you wanted to turn it to 1080p, but you're on a higher resolution monitor, like in my case here, I'm at 1440p. It forces you into windowed mode. There's no full screen, like, dedicated version for this game whatsoever. And you can't even move this window. Like, it won't let my mouse hover over the specific part. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating, I guess. I don't know why it doesn't have that option, but in order to do any resolution scaling, I'm just gonna have to say 1440p and then tell you guys the percentage resolution scale. You can go from 50%, which is performance mode on like FSR and DLSS, to 60%, which is usually balanced with FSR and DLSS, and then 66% is usually quality mode. But what could we get on the 6700 in order to get 60 FPS locked? So maybe we could bump it up to medium, and then I'd expect to turn on FSR and go to 66% for quality. And I think we could probably get 60 FPS here, at least in this area of the game. I think the areas of the game could change pretty dramatically. Now it seems like we're getting like 50 FPS, so maybe that isn't what you'd have to do. I guess let's see if we turn the 50% resolution scale is FSR performance. That should get us 60 FPS, right? On the 6700, what is this, medium settings? In FSR performance, you can get 60 FPS. Oh my God, dude. Oh God, this is demanding. Let's turn it down to low. Let's see what happens. This is literally the low preset. It'll auto turn on FSR because FSR is basically required, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. You see in the distance with that research facility. Oh, that doesn't look that good. Although I'd say overall FSR looks really good in this game. But looking over in the distance there, I mean, when you're at performance, it's going to start to struggle, especially with low settings. So it seems like if you wanted to play this game competitively, man, you need a pretty beefy card. And do you see how much this breaks down in motion here? It's like when you stand still, FSR performance starts to look pretty sharp. But if like you're turning, oh my God, it looks like jello. It's like there's motion blur on it, but there is none. On the 6700, I think you'd want to at least turn up to FSR quality, but it seems like this is another game where you need upscaling in order to get, you know, the performance you desire. Do you see how sharp the HUD is, but how blurry the environment is? And there's no motion blur on right now. Okay, so this is another struggle game. If you have any card that isn't, you know, the absolute latest and greatest, like, I guess let's also try out what the RTX 3080 looks like in this system. And we'll also get to see if there's DLSS in this game, which I'm pretty sure there is not. But let's go ahead and check it out. All right, so we're on the RTX 3080 here on high settings. I don't know, around 60 FPS. It seems to actually be a little bit faster than the 6800 XT in this game. The 6800 XT is the recommended settings, which makes me wonder why the RTX 2080 is also recommended settings in this game. But this isn't that bad. Like, it doesn't even have ray tracing in this demanding, which is kind of scary to me. Let's also go ahead and just check out the question that I bet a lot of you guys are wondering. Did AMD allow them to put DLSS in this game? And it does not look like they did. This may or may not have been AMD's fault. This might have been Bethesda's fault. There is no DLSS in Starfield. So, you know, good luck with that. I will say though, if we put FSR 2 at 66%, so quality, the game looks really good still. I don't think DLSS would look leaps and bounds better than this, but we still want to have the option to use DLSS in the game. It seems like with the 3080 at high settings, 1440p, around 80 FPS, somewhere in there, close to it. We're not getting CPU limited, which was something I was worried about. I guess we can see how it scales really quickly. Let's just see if we just stand out and look at this vista here, this beautiful rocks or something. We're getting about 64 FPS. So let's see what happens if we drop the settings down to low. Going from high to low settings, we get a, what is that, a 30-ish% gain on the FPS, which isn't bad. Actually, let's just go all the way to ultra. Let's see if we can notice a major difference. Turn off motion blur, turn off upscaling. So the RTX 3080 can push about 60 frames, 1440p high settings. Let's just go ahead and kill this troglodyte. And it seems like if you want a locked 60 FPS, so that means it wouldn't drop below 60 FPS on the 3080, turn on some FSR and I go to 66% for quality. That is the difference maker here. If you don't want to lock 60 FPS, probably like we're in high 70s, you're going to have to use FSR on the RTX 3080, kind of no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I just don't think the environment actually looks that good. Like, this kind of just looks muddy, and I don't know what it's exactly missing, but it just kind of looks like bleh. Yeah, so something else I wanted to check real quick. So 80 FPS on the average, because this game features a technology that is actually in DirectX 12 that not that many games use, and it's actually called a VRS. This is variable rate shading. And what this does is areas that are on the outside of the screen or ones that aren't as much in focus, it'll basically compile the shaders together so that it doesn't have to repeat them. It will most likely make the game run better with it on, and it defaults to having VRS on in Starfield. So let's just go ahead and look at if we turn off VRS. We were at 80 FPS before. Will we be able to even tell? Vasco, can you get out of here? We're expecting a lower than 80 FPS for this little walk here. So if you turn off VRS, at least in the case on the RTX 3080 at 1440p, high settings, FSR quality, you get a 2 FPS difference. You might as well turn it on. Like, I don't see a major visual difference. It kind of looks like motion blur is on right now. Let's see if I can even tell if VRS is on or off. I can't really tell. I guess take your extra 2 FPS. Sure. I think it can be very impactful. It depends how they implement it, but in this game it doesn't seem to be like that crazy. So if you're at the RTX 3080 1440p, I would recommend using FSR in this game. Obviously, you can also drop the game to low and not use FSR at all, and get a similar level of FPS. But in my opinion, I agree that upscaling is one of the best optimization tools because you don't get that much of a hit to visual quality. I'm going to go and throw in the GTX 1070 8GB graphics card from like 2016 or whatever, and just see if that card can even handle this game at all. So if you really wanted to play Starfield, but you have a pretty old system, is it possible? Okay, about to start the game with the GTX 1070 in there. I just wanted you guys to join me with this experience. I think it's at 1440p high settings with FSR quality right now. Oh yeah. That's better than I thought though. Or like 20 FPS. What happens if we're at the high preset 1440p and we just turn on FSR to quality? Like, can we get okay enough frames on this GPU? Could we lock it at 30 FPS maybe? It surprisingly is a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to be at like 10 FPS on this GTX 1070. Could we get a playable frame rate on the 1070 if we put everything to low? Oh, it feels a lot smoother. Looks like we're not going to be getting... Man, it looks so blurry though. We're definitely rendering at a lower resolution, that's for sure. 50 FPS? I mean, that's playable. I don't know why you'd want to play a game that looks like this, but I thought it would sharpen up as you like looked at things, but it really doesn't. When you look at things, no, just that must be the low settings or something combined with FSR. It just looks so blurry. I mean, I wouldn't recommend playing like this, but you could on the GTX 1070, it seems like. Okay, I was trying to figure this out, and I'm just gonna drop to 1080p on my main monitor because I can't get shadow play to record my other monitor. So this is how this game does resolution scaling. So let's turn off FSR at 1080p with all low settings and just see, you know, how it is at 1080p. Okay. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call it bad or anything. Really isn't that bad, actually. I'm not gonna lie. This game might be very graphically demanding. Kind of looks like it scales decently well. I mean, a low setting game in 2023, 7 years after this card came out. Let's see what happens if we turn on just, you know, FSR quality at 66%. First off, can I tell if it's on? Yes, I can definitely tell it's on. That in the distance there is really fizzly. Seems like a lot of the stuff on the ship is very not detailed. So I would actually argue that you'd want to see if you could get it up to medium settings maybe. I don't know. At medium settings, it seems like you might be able to pull a locked 30 FPS on the GTX 1070. Let's try performance. Let's see what happens on performance. That looks very blurry. I wouldn't call this playable. I don't think you'd want to play at FSR performance. It doesn't look artifacty. It just looks very low detail and not sharp. You'd think that maybe you'd have more artifacts. There's some ghosting when you switch weapons, as you can tell. So this is basically all the GPUs I wanted to test. I also have an RX 5700 XT, but it performs pretty similar to the 6700 10 gigabyte, so I didn't think it was really worth showing. It just performs a little slower. I'd say, I mean, with a lot of this, it seems to be the main issue is like, it's hard to scale this. Though if you had to play the game, like if you had no other option but to play it on 1070, 1070s go for like 80, no, like 120 bucks right now, I think, on eBay. So if you had to play it on this, you could. All right, that's all I got for you guys on the GP testing on Starfield. For early testing, I'll probably integrate this game into some of my reviews and just find it maybe a better area to test. This isn't bad, but it could be better. So if I could find something that would, you know, be more visually appealing, I don't think this planet looks all that good. Hopefully other areas of the game look better, but I can't guarantee that. So yeah, that's about it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Y'all have a good one, and peace out.